Hey everyone, I want to answer a question someone asked the other day. Is the from the ground up construction model, the build to rent model, a good opportunity, or is buying resale a good opportunity? And I want to answer that question today. As I look at my market, I see, for me, the build to rent model actually provides the highest return. The difference is resale has been a challenge. And for in my area to get that to cash flow, you're having to put more money down, which in turn then creates less return on capital. With the build to rent model, I'm able to put less money down on the project and get a higher return on capital. It's a little bit riskier because it's a build model, but there's a whole lot more reward. So that's what I want to answer that question today. Talk about the challenges, talk about the opportunities and rewards from it. So the challenges, I would say, is first in finding a good builder. I looked for a builder that was a smaller builder, building between 5 to 10 homes a year, and there was opportunity to do a cost plus model. Most of the cost plus models range from 10 to 18%. And so what you're wanting to do is find a good builder, so that also the challenge is knowing your construction cost. Dialing that in good with your builder, and what some of the things that you need to do is get those prices right. And when I was early in my build journey, I put a little bit larger contingency number or added several percent to each category throughout the build, where I was adding about 7-8% to the build, higher than what I was hoping to be able to build. That is one way to mitigate that unknown construction cost. The second thing is the lender. There's more challenges doing a construction loan. And what I found is if you will find a local community bank, and what I would suggest is get 3 banks and have them compete for your business. The first construction loan most likely is going to be a lot more conservative. I would say you meet with the banks at least 6 months before you need the money, finding out what their guidelines are, what they would require, and talk to them a little bit about the project. A good lender wants to see that you've underwritten the project well. So you're coming to them when you're doing the loan request with all the numbers, showing what you project to build it for with that reputable builder, also what rents will be. First time I did it, the loan they did at 90% of construction costs. So I had to come up with 10%. And then at the end, we did the refinance. And of course, it appraised at 20% more than I was built it for. So I actually got cash back from that and only had to put 5% actual money in it. Some of the recent construction loans, I'm getting them to bid. You might be able to find a bank that's willing to do 80% of appraisal. And if you're able to build it at 80% of retail value, you will have no money in the construction. I even had one bank that did 85% of appraised value. And that was one I went with recently. I told him I wasn't probably going to use that whole dollar amount of what he was willing to lend. I appreciated it. But that's what you've got to do, is find a good local lender. There are more challenges with the construction loan. You're having to most of the time pay interest each month on the draws. The other thing is that banks will do inspections. Every draw request that you do, they might have to do an inspection first, and sometimes they even charge an inspection fee. They're looking to make sure that the draws are in conjunction with the project. I work with a builder that doesn't request his draws until after the completion of whatever part of the build is. And that's one of the things I do, and I make sure to be safe on my part is I will then fund him and pay him directly, but it's after the work's been done. Sometimes builders want to get paid early, and you need to be cautious with that. The other thing that I look at is the prices of the costs. And I would say once you get to what's called dried in, where you have the structure built and the shingles on and it's completely dried in from the weather, you're pretty much through a lot of the unknown costs, and you can probably be good going forward. But what I do is I do look at lumber futures. I stay on top of that because the lumber package is a big percentage of the cost of the build. And even right now, with what's going in the economy and the potential tariffs with Canada, lumber prices are projected to go up over 15% with our local lumber houses that provide lumber. They're telling everybody that lumber futures and lumber prices will be up 15%. So you need to know those things. But if you have a good, healthy contingency in there for the unknown, you should be good on that. And when I underwrite the project, even with all the contingencies, I want to make sure that based off the rents and what I think the final completion on worst case scenario, that property still will cash flow. And anything better to that makes the numbers even better. That's how I do it, and making sure that I'm extra conservative. The other thing, the challenge is finding good infill lots. That's the safest way to do it versus development of a big parcel of land, 5-10 acres with a lot of lots. That's a little bit more risky even to a bank. As you're getting into this, finding good, I would say, infill lots that ideally have sewer taps and all the utilities there. That's the safest way to know that. And also find lots that are relatively flat. The more undulations and grade, the more chance you've got costs with retaining walls that add cost to your build that might not make it produce a good return. So those are some of the challenges you find, but you can overcome those with good underwriting of the cost of the project, putting in contingencies. Then the other side, and why I think the build to rent model has been phenomenal for our family, is the opportunities. And each build I get better and better, knowing my costs, dialed in with knowing what the final price will be. But the opportunities are, when you buy resale, you're right now in our area, you're having to put 30-35% down just to get it to cash flow. With the build model, I've been able to build, you're usually building between 10 and 20% equity. I've been able to build these with 20% equity so that my actual down payment when I get finished with the completion is maximum 5% into the project. So you're only having to put, depending on it's 10 to 20%, you're having to put 5 to 15% down on the construction cost versus right now with cash flow 30 to 35% to get resale properties to cash flow in the regular retail market. And that's even a return on capital. I looked at one just the other day that just sold in the last 2 weeks, a duplex, that I underwrote it from my back end of what it actually sold for. They were going to have to put 35% down, and it was only going to cash flow at around 3.8% on your return on your cash into it, not including the closing costs. So that's a lower return. And what I've been able to do with all of my build to rent model is cash flow above 10%. And my average as of this year in 2025, I'm averaging 27% return on capital on all my builds. And so those are some of the opportunities. It gives that high return on capital. The other is you're able to build in that modern floor plan, what people are wanting, the big open concepts, everything looks nice, fresh, it's new, that modern floor plan. The renters, and what we know is renters, ideally, if they had the choice, they're going to look and want to rent a newer or brand new property. And what I've been able to find is I've got a premium in my rents, usually around $50 more per month being mine brand new versus the regular other market. But I also put a little bit of, I call it value engineering into my builds. I do a few nice custom touches to my builds that even among track builders, if I was competing with them, and I've had renters say that they've chosen mine because they could tell it was a more of a custom feel because I put some of that value engineering into it, of looking at things that maybe cost fewer dollars but have higher perceived value by the renters. There is, of course, with build to rent, there is a little more risk because you've got a chance of increased cost during the build. You've just got to get through the build process. You don't know till the final, when it's completed, what your final price is. But on the other hand, I love the build to rent model. With all these opportunities, I've been able to receive much higher returns and higher built-in equity from these properties versus the resale. And within these first 5 years, developed an equity position of well over $1 million that if I would have done this on the resale side, I would have had to put a whole lot more money of my own into it. Of actual appreciation would have been a much smaller of appreciation side. I've been able to capture that, and I call it after construction value, getting that forced equity, because I've been able to build them all with at least 20% equity. And I think you could look at this investment strategy. I think it's a good one for us. I know a couple of others that I talked to in our one rental at a time community that have started doing this, and they're receiving these same rewards. And what I call it is we're hammering out financial freedom one rental at a time. Till next time, see you then.